Sorry. Okay, so we had covered two slides initially, that is specific learning objectives. Now we will go again to the shoulder joint. If you look at the shoulder joint, which said it is called as clinohumeral joint because it is formed by the clinoid cavity and the head of the humerus. You need to classify it. It is multi-axial synovial ball and socket type of joint. In this multi-axial ball and socket type of joint, the head is the ball is formed by the head of the humerus, which is covered by the articulating surface. This articulating surface is thicker in the center and thinner in the periphery. Is it right? And it is forming 1/3 of the spear. The socket is formed by the clinoid cavity of the scapula. There is a tubercle, which is supraclinoid tubercle, which will give origin to the long head of biceps. The the long head of the biceps will be intracapsular. This is also covered by the hyaline cartilage, which is thinner in the center. Now, if you see this, the ball is definitely bigger than the clinoid fossa, so it will not fit into it. So to deepen the clinoid fossa, it is covered by a fibrocartilaginous rim, which is called as clinoid labyrinth. What are the ligaments of the shoulder joint? Obviously, any synovial joint or any joint will have a capsule. So there is a fibrous capsule. This is lined inside by the synovial membrane. And as we said, the clinoid fossa is smaller, so there's a clinoid labyrinth to it. The another ligament which is important is glenohumeral ligament. We will see all the ligaments in detail. So to enumerate the ligaments, we have the fibrous capsule lined inside by the synovial membrane, glenoid labyrinth, glenohumeral ligament, coracohumeral ligament, transverse humeral ligament. First, we will look at the fibrous capsule. If you look at the fibrous capsule, it is a very close envelope. See, the shoulder joint has lots of movements to be taking place, and the movements are very, very free movements. So definitely the capsule should be light, loose. Otherwise, the movements will be restricted. So it is a very unstable joint. It is a very unstable joint, if you see, because of the excessive movements which have to take place. The capsule is very loose. It's very loosely attached. If you see the attachment of the capsule, medially they are attached to the margin of the clinoid labyrinth. And as we said, the supraclinoid tubercle is giving origin to the long head of biceps, right? So this long head of biceps is present within the capsule, or it is intracapsular. The long head of biceps, which will run over the shoulder joint, is intracapsular. So medially it is getting attached to the peripheral margin of the clinoid labyrinth. Laterally, it goes towards the anatomical neck of the humerus. It goes towards the anatomical neck of the humerus, except it is deficit at one place, at two places actually. It is deficit at the upper end of the intratubercular sulcus. If you recall the intratubercular sulcus, latissimus dorsi in the floor, pectoralis major and teres major, right? In this passes the long head of biceps. Can you see this? The long head is passing through it. So the capsule is deficit over here in the upper end of the intertubercular sulcus. And as it goes towards the medial side of the humerus, the capsule dips down. It's very lax over here. It goes almost 1 centimeter below to reach the surgical neck or the approach the surgical neck of the humerus. This is very important for overhead abduction. You can abduct your shoulder joint to reach actually to touch your ear. So that is overhead abduction. If the capsule was tight over here, this movement would not have been possible. So if you can see, it is going down up to the 1 centimeter below the surgical notch, and here it is deficit for allowing the long head of biceps to enter into it. Now, as I told you, this capsule is very weak. So, to give stability to it, the muscles which are surrounding the capsule, there are four muscles. We will see the four muscles in detail later. They form a rotator cuff. They form the rotator cuff around the shoulder joint. The synovial membrane, which is just present below the capsule, lines the inside surface of the capsule all over, and it also goes along with the long head of biceps tendon. Can you see it is going here? And so the synovial sheath along with the long head of biceps will enter into the intertubercular sulcus. In front, this is the subscapular fossa of the scapula. The subscapularis muscle will run from here. So just there is a bursa over here which is called as subscapular bursa. So it is also communicating with the subscapular bursa. Now coming to the glenoid labyrinth. This is the glenoid cavity. This is the glenoid labyrinth. What is it? It is nothing but a cartilage which is fibrocartilage. It is a fibrocartilaginous rim, and the main purpose of it is, obviously it is attached all over the margins of the glenoid fossa. If you take a cross section, it is triangular in section. This is there so that the glenoid cavity will become deeper. It will become deeper to allow the head of the humerus to fit into it. If you see above, it is here in the above part, there is origin of long head of biceps. So the labyrinth is absent here, it is present all around over here. Can you see it very clearly? So it is actually forming a cushion around the head of the humerus to allow various movements to take place at the shoulder joint. The next ligament which is there is the glenohumeral ligament. This glenohumeral ligament is present around the glenoid cavity going to the humerus, so the name has come as glenohumeral ligament. It is present anterior to the joint. There are three bands. This is intertubercular sulcus, this is lesser tubercle, this is greater tubercle of the humerus, right? If you see the upper fibers, these fibers which are running along the axis of the biceps brachii muscle going towards the lesser tubercle, this is forming the superior band. This is forming the superior band of the glenohumeral ligament. Then if you see in this part, in the middle part, you can see there's an opening. Can you see this? This is the opening for communicating with the subscapular bursa. So in the middle part, there's an opening for the subscapular bursa. So superior glenohumeral ligament, middle band of the glenohumeral ligament, and the inferior band of the glenohumeral ligament goes from the glenoid cavity. It is going towards the anatomical neck of the humerus. So almost all of them are going, but as the direction are a bit different, we define the glenohumeral ligament into superior band, middle band, and inferior band. Remember, the inferior middle band will have the opening for the subscapular bursa, communication with the subscapular bursa. Superior band along the long axis of biceps brachii, and the inferior one to the anatomical neck of the humerus. Now coming to the coracohumeral ligament, the name itself says it is coming from the coracoid process of the scapula. This is the coracoid process of the scapula. So this comes from the lateral margin of the coracoid process, and it is going towards the humerus. It is a very thick band. If you see, it is actually present above or superior to the shoulder joint. It goes from the coracoid process. It goes up till the area between the greater and the lesser tubercle towards the anatomical neck of the humerus till it reaches the anatomical. Where is the place between the anatomical neck? Between the greater and the lesser tubercle of the humerus. Obviously, as it is running this way, it will resist lateral rotation at the shoulder joint and the adduction at the shoulder joint. The last ligament of the shoulder joint is the transverse humeral ligament. This transverse humeral ligament is connecting the two lips of the intertubercular sulcus. It is connecting the two lips of the intertubercular sulcus. Can you see this? This is very clearly seen. Obviously, the function is the long head of biceps is passing through this intertubercular sulcus. So to keep the long head in place, there's a transverse humeral ligament. If you see in a regular position, the long head of biceps is present anteriorly, but during abduction or the lateral rotation, when it will take place, this head of the biceps goes superiorly. So in that position, the long head of biceps will be presenting here. So this long head of the biceps will prevent upwards displacement of the head of the humerus in the shoulder joint. Is it clear? So this is giving a push to the head of the humerus in lateral rotation and abduction of the shoulder joint. Now, as we said, the joint is very weak, like that you lose envelope. So, but the moments are too much. So there has to be factors which are giving stability to the shoulder joint. We'll like to see all the factors which are helping for the stability. We have seen the glenoid labyrinth, which was deepening the socket. We saw the ligaments, we saw the glenohumeral ligament, we saw coracohumeral ligament, and we saw transverse humeral ligament. Now, try to understand this picture. This is the clinoid fossa, this is the acromion process, and this is the coracoid process of the scapula. Okay, so now if you see this, this is a labyrinth, and this is your glenoid labyrinth, and this is your long head of biceps which is taking, and this is a synovial membrane. So outside the synovial membrane we have the capsule. Just outside the capsule, if you see, above there's a muscle which is supraspinatus. Just posterior and below to the supraspinatus we have another muscle which is infraspinatus. Still down to that you have a muscle which is teres minor. And if you go anterior and inferior to the supraspinatus, we have a muscle which is subscapularis. So these four muscles, that is your subscapularis, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor, they are absolutely adjacent to the capsule, and the tendon, the muscle and the tendonic fibers actually intervene with the capsule to form a rotator cuff. So this is called as rotator cuff, musculotendinous rotator cuff of the shoulder joint, which acts as a guardian of the joint. So what we said, there are four muscles, namely supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis. If you recall, supraspinatus was coming from the scapular fossa, which is going towards the greater tubercle, upper part of the greater tubercle. Infraspinatus originates from the infrascapular fossa going to the middle part of the greater tubercle of the humerus. Teres minor comes from the lateral border of the scapula, and it goes towards the lower part of the greater tubercle. So SIT, they are going and getting inserted on the greater tubercle. Whereas the subscapular muscle comes from the subscapular fossa, and it will go towards the lesser tubercle. So the muscles which are inserted on the greater tubercle and the lesser tubercle, they form a rotator cuff around the shoulder joint, and this is called as musculotendinous rotator cuff of the shoulder joint. This can be asked as a short note for you all. Now, what we said, the intracapsular long head of biceps was there, and just above this, can you see, joining the coracoid process to the acromion process as a ligament. and this ligament is called as coracoacromial ligament or coracoacromial arch because it is forming an arch-like structure. So this long head of biceps and coracoacromial arch will prevent upwards displacement, dislocation of the head of the humerus. So that is also giving stability to it. So intracapsular long head of biceps, coracoacromial arch, in addition to the rotator cuff, are giving stability to the joint. Now, everybody try to understand the relations, then we will draw the diagram of the relations. It's quite important to understand it first. If you see above, we saw supraspinatus, okay, sorry. Above we saw supraspinatus, subacromial bursa and coracoacromial arch. I'll show you this in the diagram below. If you see this is supraspinatus, infraspinatus, this is teres minor. This is a quadrangular space. If we had seen it in the dissection as well we've seen in the lectures. Passing through this, we have the axillary nerve and the posterior circumflex humeral vessels. So they are present just below the shoulder joint. They are present just below the shoulder joint. Just in short, to revise the boundaries of the quadrangular space, medially long head of triceps, inferiorly we have teres major, superiorly we have teres minor, laterally we have surgical neck of the humerus, right? Below we have infraspinatus and teres minor. Now in front, the subscapularis and coracobrachialis and short head of biceps. Within the capsule, long head of triceps. Now everybody please, this diagram appears very difficult, but it is very easy to draw once you start drawing it. So we will try drawing it. First, everybody draw the clinoid fossa. Everybody draw with me the clinoid fossa. If you have drawn the clinoid fossa, just around the clinoid fossa, draw a blue color clinoid labyrinth. Go upwards, and then you over here at the upper end of the clinoid labyrinth, we said there was supraclinoid tubercle from where there is origin of long head of biceps. So everybody with me, draw the clinoid labyrinth. After drawing the clinoid labyrinth, continue upwards and draw the long head of biceps. Once you draw the long head of biceps, obviously outside that, in blue color, you should draw the synovial membrane. If you saw the synovial membrane, it will go all around the glenoid labyrinth, getting attached to it, and anteriorly, it is forming a bursa. This is the subscapular bursa. We will see this bursa in detail later, but there is a bursa here, which is called a subscapular bursa. Okay, so draw the subscapular bursa. Outside that, draw the capsule. Green color is the capsule of the shoulder joint. The capsule is, we said it is deficit here, so that there will be communicating of the synovial cavity with the subscapular bursa. Have you finished this? You've drawn the glenoid fossa, drawn the glenoid labyrinth. Above, you've drawn the long head of biceps. Then you draw the synovial membrane, which is communicating with the subscapular bursa. And then you draw the fibrous capsule, which is not, it is deficit here. Just above that, supraspinatus. Just above the joint, you have to draw supraspinatus. If you go posteriorly and inferior to it, infraspinatus. Just still inferior to it, teres minor. So supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, right? Just anterior to this bursa, this is subscapularis. This is subscapularis. Is it clear? So we have done the rotator cuff, that is supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor and subscapularis. Now above the subscapularis, there is acromion process. Draw the acromion process, and here you have the coracoid process. The acromion process and the coracoid process are joined together by coracoacromial ligament or coracoacromial arch. So you draw the coracoacromial arch. Just below the coracoacromial arch, you draw a bursa which is present between the supraspinatus and coracoacromial arch, which is called a subacromial bursa. Which is the subacromial bursa, a very big bursa. Actually, it is the largest bursa of the body. That is the subacromial bursa. Now, coming from the acromion process, anteriorly and posteriorly, we have deltoid. So the deltoid muscle is present here, posteriorly as well as anteriorly. What we said coming below. If you see below over here, the long head of triceps will cross from the infraclinoid tubercle and go downwards for the insertion. And there is teres minor. So this forms your quadrangular space. Related to the subscapularis, we have seen there is a posterior cord. This posterior cord, when it is running down, will give the axillary nerve branch. From it is the axillary nerve, and the axillary artery, third part, will give the posterior circumflex humeral artery. So they will be related here. So now if you see the relation, above supraspinatus, subacromial bursa, coracoacromial arch. Below quadrangular space, giving axillary nerve, posterior circumflex humeral vessels, and the long head of triceps. Behind infraspinatus and teres minor. In front subscapularis, forget about the coracobrachialis and short head, which cannot be drawn over here. And within the capsule, we had long head of biceps. Deltoid will cover all around it, like in the front and behind. So these are the relations you should, and this diagram you should draw for the relations of the joint. Now coming to the bursa, we said there are bursas which are communicating with the cavity. If you remember, we saw one bursa which was a subscapular bursa, and another bursa which is communicating is the infraspinatus bursa. The non-communicating bursas are subacromial bursa, which is the largest bursa of the body. This can be asked as an MCQ. Remember this. The subacromial bursa is the largest bursa of the body. We saw that there's a bursa above the acromion process. There is bursa between the capsule and the coracoid process. There is bursa behind the coracobrachialis. There is bursa between the teres minor and the long head of triceps. In front and behind the tendon of latissimus dorsi. As we said, the synovial sheath will run along the tendon of the long head of biceps. This is not very important to remember. What you have to remember is this subacromial bursa, synovial sheath along the long head of biceps, subscapular bursa, and infraspinatus bursa. Is it clear? What is the blood supply of the shoulder joint? The shoulder joint is supplied by anterior and posterior circumflex humeral vessels, arteries, which are coming from the third part of the axillary artery, and there is a subscapular artery, circumflex scapular vessels. Okay, so they will be, you have seen anastomosis around the scapula already. So you understand these arteries in detail. The nerve supply, it gets the nerve supply from the subscapular nerve. It gets from the axillary nerve, and it gets the nerve supply from the musculocutaneous nerve. Right, so if you remember the shoulder joint, we said there is multi-axial joint. The moments are quite a bit. So what are the moments of the shoulder joint? The moments are flexion and extension. Flexion and extension. Then we have abduction and adduction. Abduction and adduction. There is medial rotation and lateral rotation. And if you combine all these moments, it is called as circumduction. We will see each moment in detail. What are the axes which will bring about this moment, or the plane of the moment? There are three perpendicular axes. One axis, this is the head of the humerus and this is your clinoid fossa. If an axis which is passing from anterior to posterior, the axis is present this way. Actually, it is parallel to the plane of the scapula, if you see. So it is not present straight. It is having a parallel to the clinoid cavity. Always remember this. Okay. So this action which is taking place is abduction and adduction. Abduction and adduction will take through the plane which is the antero-posterior plane of the shoulder joint. Now another plane which is transverse plane which is passing through the head of the humerus and the clinoid cavity. If you see, there will be flexion and extension. Again here, as it is to the center of the clinoid cavity, the scapula is not present transverse, straight transverse. If you see the lateral end, it's a bit anterior. So it is having an angle. So whenever there's flexion and extension at the shoulder joint, flexion will be forward and medially, and extension will be backwards and slightly laterally because of the axis. The last axis, which is the vertical axis, it passes through the head of the humerus to the lower end of the humerus, that is called as capitulum. There will be medial and lateral rotation. So we saw three planes: antero-posterior plane, transverse plane and vertical plane. Around the antero-posterior we saw abduction and adduction. Around the transverse plane we saw flexion and extension, and vertical plane there is medial rotation and lateral rotation. The flexion of the arm, as we said, because of the axis will be forwards and medially. The muscles which bring about flexion at the shoulder joint is anterior fibers of the deltoid muscle. These are the anterior fibers of the deltoid muscle. Then the pectoralis major muscle. Then we have coracobrachialis and biceps brachii. So the muscles which are running anterior to deltoid, pectoralis major, coracobrachialis and biceps will bring about flexion of the shoulder joint. Coming to the extension, again this extension will be backwards and laterally. The muscles are again posterior fibers of the deltoid now. We have teres major, we have latissimus dorsi. Is it clear? Latissimus dorsi, teres major and deltoid. Coming to the adduction, that is towards the body or the midline, the muscles are pectoralis major will pull it towards the body. We have latissimus dorsi, okay, and teres major, right? So if you recall, the muscles on the intertubercular sulcus, that is the pectoralis major, latissimus dorsi and lady between the two majors will bring about adduction of the shoulder joint. Coracobrachialis will also assist it. Coming to the abduction. Abduction is a difficult, it's a full range movement. It is a range, it takes about 180-degree abduction of the shoulder joint is possible, but it is not taking place only at the shoulder joint. It is taking place at the pectoral girdle also. How? Out of the total 180-degree of abduction of the humerus at the shoulder joint, 120 is taking place at the shoulder joint, and remaining is because the movements of the scapula, that is the lateral rotation of the scapula at the pectoral girdle. So it is a combination of movements. What we see, 180-degree abduction is taking place at the shoulder joint and at the acromioclavicular and the sternoclavicular joint, which will bring about 60% of the movements. We will see this in detail later. What are the muscles? For now, you remember the muscles: the supraspinatus, then infraspinatus, then we have deltoid. This is the acromion fibers of the deltoid, which are multipinnate fibers, which will bring about abduction against the gravity. Abduction is against the moment is against the gravity. So we need a stronger muscle over here. So deltoid. Then serratus anterior, trapezius. We will see this in detail later. For now, you recall the muscles. Okay, we will finish with the. Yeah, now we will see the. Now, if you see the abduction, as the supraspinatus is going just above the joint. So initial 15 degree of the abduction will take place by the supraspinatus. Remember, 0 to 15 degree is by supraspinatus, right? Abduction. Now what will happen? The abduction will continue till it reaches here, 90 degree. And that is by deltoid. This is your greater tubercle of the humerus. This is coracoid process. This is coracoacromial arch, right? So as this humerus will go on abducting, there will be a point where this greater tubercle will get impinged over here, or they both will come in approximation together over here. And when this happens, the abduction will stop. So what happens at this juncture is the two muscles, that is your infraspinatus and teres minor, which are present posterior to the joint, will bring about lateral rotation of the humerus. So when this is happening, the greater tubercle will become laterally and it will overcome the impingement. So after 90 degree, the infraspinatus and teres minor will rotate the humerus so that the greater tubercle will not get stuck in the coracoacromial arch and the abduction will continue. After this, what happens? It will reach up till 120 degree now. Once it reaches the 120 degree, the trapezius and the serratus anterior will act on the scapula. And if you recall the moments of the scapula, there was inferior angle will get laterally rotated. Can you see this? The inferior angle is getting laterally rotated by trapezius and serratus anterior. And this lateral rotation of the scapula will bring about a moment which will be overhead abduction, which will lead it to 180 degree. In the whole process, the fibers which are of the trapezius which are attached over here will keep the superior angle of the scapula stabilized. Will keep the superior angle of the scapula stabilized. So what is the middle fibers of trapezius are stabilizing the scapula, right? So how do we analyze the abduction, overhead abduction? 0 to 15 degree, first abduction is by supraspinatus. There was no problem with this. Then the acromial fibers of the deltoid will take over, and from 15 to 90 degree, it will be by deltoid. As the greater tubercle will start impinging on the coracoacromial arch, there will be lateral rotation of the humerus by the infraspinatus and teres minor. This will make the abduction 120 degree. After that, the trapezius and serratus anterior will act on the scapula for the lateral rotation of the scapula to bring about overhead abduction. Is it clear? So abduction is brought about by supraspinatus, deltoid, infraspinatus, teres minor, trapezius and serratus anterior. Only abduction of the shoulder joint can be asked as a short note. Remember this. Coming to the lateral movement, we have seen lateral rotation. It is against the vertical axis. The muscles are infraspinatus and teres minor. We have already seen this in the shoulder joint abduction also. Deltoid posterior fibers also help it. Coming to the medial rotation, is obviously anterior muscle, that is subscapularis, and pectoralis major. Latissimus dorsi muscle will also. Main prime medial rotator is subscapularis. Is it clear? Deltoid will end. Okay, now the circumduction is combination of all the moments in a circular moment. What is happening, that this proximal end of the humerus will stay, but the distal end will be rotating in all the directions, like there will be flexion, abduction, extension, adduction, which will be called circumduction. Coming to the applied anatomy of the shoulder joint, the shoulder joint is very unstable joint, we said. And if you recall, anteriorly, superiorly, and posteriorly, there was rotator cuff muscle. So where was it very weak? Inferiorly. So mostly dislocation takes place antero-inferiorly. As we said, the capsule is loosely attached here so that it will allow overhead abduction. This is a very weak point of the shoulder joint. The commonest dislocation of the shoulder joint is antero-inferiorly. Inferior dislocation is the commonest. In the full abducted hand, as you can see over here, this with the abduction taking place, there's a forceful, moment at the scapula of throwing the ball, right? So what will happen, the head is almost down here, and this head will be pushing the capsule downwards, and there will be dislocation. So certain violence applied to the humerus in the full abducted hand usually will tear the capsule inwards or downwards, and there will be the head of the humerus will come inferior to the clinoid fossa, leading to inferior dislocation. As you recall the relations of the shoulder joint, inferiorly we had quadrangular space, and passing through the quadrangular space we had axillary nerve. So if there's a dislocation of the shoulder joint inferiorly, what will be damaged? Axillary nerve. And as we recall, axillary nerve supplies deltoid and teres minor muscle. So there will be paralysis of the deltoid, and there will be anesthesia over this area. Is it clear? If the dislocation is still severe, it still goes below that. So below the quadrangular space, it will go to the lower triangular space. Then the radial nerve will also be injured, and there will be anesthesia towards 3.5 fingers, and all there will be wrist drop, as we recall we have seen in the radial nerve. So dislocation of the shoulder will injure. Most common is inferior dislocation, will injure the axillary nerve. It can injure the radial nerve also along with it. Now we saw there was a rotator cuff muscles, right? If you recall the rotator cuff muscles, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis. If there is any lesion to this rotator cuff muscles, what lesion can happen over here is, one lesion which happens is if there is overhead activity, lots of overhead activity. Every time the supraspinatus will be pushing over or getting into friction with the coracoacromial arch, and sometimes if it is forceful or overhead activity is more, this supraspinatus muscle can rupture. If this rupture takes place because of the friction, okay, and this subacromial bursa is there, because of the friction, this bursa also can get inflamed, which is called as subacromial bursitis, right? So there can be rupture of the supraspinatus tendon, there can be subacromial bursitis. Because of all these conditions, they will, if the supraspinatus bursa tendon gets ruptured, it will either calcify or heal by calcification, isn't it? So there will be more interference in the abduction, normal abduction of the shoulder joint. As we recall, supraspinatus tendon abduction 0 to 15 degree. So what will be affected? The beginning of the abduction will be affected if supraspinatus is injured. That is 0 to 15 degree, there will be no abduction. The person will lose abduction. So when you tell the person to abduct, the person can't start the abduction. You must have observed sometimes in some persons, when they have to abduct the shoulder, they droop that shoulder on that same side. Suppose the right side supraspinatus is injured, the drooping of the shoulder takes place at this side. You keep your arm along your trunk and then you droop your shoulder. What is happening? Automatically there is 0 to 15 degree of abduction. Okay. So in such person, to initiate the abduction, the person bends towards that side or lowers the shoulder on that side and starts the abduction. Remember this. Now, if there is subacromial bursitis, there can be degenerative changes, or because of the friction, the rotator cuff muscle and the tendon around all of it is there. This condition is called as pericapsulitis or subscapulous tendinitis. So all the capsule of the shoulder joint will get inflamed and there'll be no movements at the shoulder joint. Okay, and then it will lead to a condition which is called as frozen shoulder. Now, when there is beginning, that is subacromial bursitis is taking place, if you look at this subacromial bursitis, you look at the moments very, very clearly. This is the person, the acromial bursa, subacromial bursa is the dark one. There is beginning of abduction. 0 to 15 degree will be okay. The moment will start, abduction will start. But when it comes to middle of the abduction, this will imprint over the coracoacromial arch and it will be very, very painful. The person will have lots of pain. And if you still abduct the shoulder, the subacromial bursa comes medially and the person will be okay. So the middle portion of the abduction, the middle range of the abduction will be very, very painful. This is the diagnosis of subacromial bursitis. A quick revision of a very quick revision of all the shoulder joint. The shoulder joint is also called as cliniohumeral joint. It is multi-axial ball and socket type of joint. The head of the humerus, which is forming 1/3 sphere, articulates with the clinoid cavity. So the cliniohumeral joint is formed. It is a very weak joint, but the moments are at full, lots of moments, multi-axial, less stable, definitely. What are the articulating surfaces we saw? Head of the humerus covered by the hyaline cartilage. This hyaline cartilage is thicker in the center, clinoid cavity, which is also covered by hyaline cartilage. There's a fibrous capsule medially attached to the clinoid labyrinth, including the origin of the long head of the biceps at the supraclinoid tubercle, we said, laterally to the anatomical neck, and inferiorly it goes down to the surgical neck, which is weak over here. It is supported by the rotator cuff muscles. We have seen them. The synovial membrane will line the inner surface of the capsule. It is forming a tubular sheath around the tendon of biceps brachii. It is communicating with the subscapular bursa and the infraspinatus bursa. Ligaments, we saw cliniohumeral ligament present anteriorly is made up of 3 brands: superior, middle and inferior brands. The clinoid labyrinth is surrounding the clinoid fossa. It is a fibrocartilaginous rim. Upwards it is deficit for origin of long head of biceps. It is for the deepening of the fossa. Coracohumeral coming from the coracoid process, going towards the area between the lesser and the greater tubercle to the anatomical neck. Transverse humeral ligament is attaching to the intertubercular sulcus margin of the keeping the long head of the biceps in place. For the stability, we said the fibrous capsule is very weak, so there are different ligaments which are helping for the stability. What are the ligaments we saw? We saw the glenohumeral ligament anteriorly, which was supporting it, right? So it will reinforce the capsule anteriorly and prevent the anterior dislocation. Superiorly, we have coracohumeral ligament. And just above the coracohumeral ligament, we have coracoacromial arch, which will prevent the superior displacement and also the tendon of the biceps. Remember this. The four rotator cuff muscles you have to remember: supraspinatus, infraspinatus, which represent and teres minor and subscapularis. Obviously, the glenoid labyrinth muscle giving stability. Bursas in communication are bursas in related to the shoulder are many. You have to remember subscapular bursa, infraspinatus bursa, and long tendon of bicep and subacromial bursa. Relations we have recalled, if you recall above, we had coracoacromial arch, subacromial bursa, supraspinatus, and deltoid. Below we had quadrangular space on the long head of triceps, axillary nerve, and posterior circumflex vessels which are passing through it. Anteriorly we have subscapularis, subscapular bursa, coracobrachialis, and short head of biceps. Also deltoid anterior fibers. Posteriorly infraspinatus, teres minor, and posterior fibers of deltoid. Moments we saw there was flexion anterior and medial, and this was taking place around the anterior-posterior joint, and extension. This abduction we saw in detail: overhead abduction 0 to 15 supraspinatus, then deltoid, then infraspinatus and teres minor bringing about lateral rotation, then is trapezius and serratus anterior. Then you have medial rotation and lateral rotation which are taking place around the longitudinal or vertical axis. Okay, so these are the different, and last moment is the circumduction, that is combination of all the moments which is taking place, right? So these are the different moments and the muscles which are producing the moments. Coming to the blood supply, blood supply is by the anterior and posterior circumflex humeral vessels and suprascapular nerve and the circumflex scapular nerve. The nerve supply is axillary nerve, suprascapular nerve, and musculocutaneous nerve. Coming to the clinical, so see, you will, whenever you write a LAQ, I advise everybody to write a LAQ. That is, classify the joint, write the articulation surface, draw the diagram for the articulation surfaces, draw one diagram for the ligaments, draw one diagram for the relations and enumerate all the relations, explain the rotator cuff muscles, blood supply, nerve supply, movements, and muscles taking place. For the applied anatomy, you have to write dislocation of the shoulder joint, rupture of supraspinatus bursa, subacromial bursitis, and frozen shoulder. Is it clear? So this will finish all your shoulder joint. Now there's a quiz. For this, I can request somebody to unmute yourself, and first every